Hello everyone, and happy Easter Sunday. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic, and we'll start in the southeast coast here. All the red area here, the exception of, looks like over there toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, and over to Stewart. Everywhere else is under the influence of a high wind warning, kicks in tonight until about 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Winds will kick up first here down along the south coast, and then eventually on up to the north as that low center pulls north and northwest right off the coast. Classic wind setup there. Looking for winds 40 miles per hour with gusts above 60 miles per hour. Some areas may even see higher winds than that, usually windier areas like Cape Spencer, for example. But anyway, that's out for tonight until about 7 a.m. tomorrow. Then the winds will diminish, although it'll be slower going. They'll still be pretty brisk probably throughout the entire day here over the northern panhandle and become noticeably lighter throughout the day tomorrow in the south. Otherwise, nothing here over southern Alaska in the way of any advisories or warnings, but different story north of the mountains here. Got a winter weather advisory in the eastern Alaska range that goes into effect tomorrow evening. Actually, Monday night through Tuesday, 2 to 3 inches of snow, winds maybe gusting 45 miles an hour. Could create some visibilities as low as half a mile. And then we got winter storm warnings out here for the greater Fairbanks area, all the eastern interior, right over to Tanana, northward to upper Yukon Valley. And that's out for tomorrow night and Tuesday for anywhere from 6 to 10 inches of snow with possible 12-inch amounts falling is what they got in the forecast now in this area. And back to the west here, these are winter weather advisories for anywhere from 1 to 3, maybe 4 inches of snow with winds gusting 35 miles an hour, so not looking for as serious of conditions back here to the west or to the north here as in the warning area. But you can see pretty widespread all the way out to the Arctic coast in the winter weather advisories, and a lot less here, just the north side of the Seward Peninsula there for Shishmaref. And for the breakout map, not much change here. You can see some open water until it gets to the Yukon River on the Tanana here, and mostly open, a couple of spots there back to the west, and Susitna River about the same, Copper River, same thing. Seeing some open areas here. This one's still east, small area there, but that's still in Canada there to the east of Eagle. So the Yukon pretty well still solid, and of course rivers to the north, same thing, solid. And the Kuskokwim here really kind of just hanging a stationary status quo here until it warms up again. And for the fire danger map, we have some more widespread areas than what was on yesterday, and this is for grass fuels, not anything bigger than that. And mostly due to the increase in the winds today, about the same there in the Copper River Basin. So high fire dangers as far as grass goes here for the north side of the Alaska Range. Looks like up there toward the Yukon River as well, near the border. And then down the river valleys there in the west to a lesser extent. And moving on to satellite imagery. Got that low center pulling up in across the Kenai Peninsula today, Cook Inlet, heading up into the Susitna Valley. Roughly centered in this area here. Cold air coming back around here, so we had snow going the entire day at Unalaska, Alaska Peninsula, a little more snow showery conditions, snow showers to the Pribilofs, and some light rain out there toward Adak and Atka. But again, rainfall amounts kind of varied here, quite varied and variable, with Ketchikan picking up about 1 2/3 inches of precipitation, and everywhere else had much lighter amounts. Generally, though, for the North Gulf Coast, Yakutat 1/2 inch, Port Graham, Homer, same thing, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch of rain today at over there at Seward, and then around 1 inch falling in the Portage area, or I'm sorry, at Whittier. And as this front came northward, the low center pulled northward earlier today, Middleton Island had gusts to 70 miles an hour, and Montague Island had gusts of 70 miles an hour. Middleton, 55 miles an hour with storm warnings. Those coming down now this afternoon with, I think, 45 mile an hour wind gusts at Cordova. And anyway, clouds, areas of light precipitation back here to the west, much lighter, heaviest here along the coast into the Panhandle, and not too bad farther to the north. Rolling this through again. Wrong way. Let's see. There we go. I don't know how it backed up that far. Anyway, start that up again and catch up. And basically looking at easterly flow up here. That should help raise the Sealing's visibilities a little bit. In fact, I think it was Point Hope went clear this afternoon for a period there, but areas of light snow, Cape Lisburne and western Arctic coastal zone, and then some light snow down to the north side of the Seward Peninsula as well, with areas of that same type of condition, Tin City and St. Lawrence Island. Winds, though, Cape Romanzoff out of the north-northeast, gusts 41 miles per hour. And on the chart here, here's that low center coming right up into south central Alaska. Lee side of the Alaska Range saw some sun today there, Delta Junction and into the Tanana Valley. And this mostly is mid and high level clouds up through this area. Light snow flurries, fog, eastern Arctic coast, west side as well, and then through the Bering Strait. And then scattered areas of light snow showers here. Nothing really significant over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. A little bit heavier though along the Alaska Peninsula, the eastern Aleutians up to about some areas, 0.2 of an inch water equivalent there, about 1/10 of an inch at Adak. And with that westerly flow, not a bad day at Kodiak, some variable clouds and possible sunshine the way it looks on this imagery. Next system down here to the south will be tracking northward pretty rapidly tonight and then pulling northwest, so it's going to roll up right along the southeast coast. High wind warning out in advance of that front. Storm warnings out for Clarence Strait for tonight, and gales everywhere else, with, again, winds gusting over 60 miles an hour ahead of this front, starting in the south and then working northward. The low center pulling northwestward. May track right over Kodiak early tomorrow morning. This low slowly pulling back to the west. Cold air out here continues to plunge southward and to a certain extent try to push eastward here. So still a chance of snow showers, southern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula. Scattering out, northern Cook Inlet probably won't see much. The Sitna Matanuska Valley as well, maybe some isolated snow showers over toward the mountains, but a general area of snow here from the eastern Seward Peninsula right down across the lower Yukon River Valley into the Kuskokwim Valley, and snow showers continue back out to the west. Pretty gusty winds up here continue or actually increase Bering Strait in the Brooks Range area. And that's going to continue, as we'll see through tomorrow. Pretty tight gradient up through this area with a batch of snow there for the north slope on out to the Arctic coast, light snow. And then kind of a mixed precipitation pattern here. We got some warm air coming up with this thing initially, and the colder air back to the west. Colder air now surging eastward. Snowfall levels fall to sea level for Kodiak Island. Same thing for the Kenai Peninsula. But the warmer air to the north here will keep kind of a mixed precipitation pattern going until you get to the right elevation. And showers, winds diminishing, showers diminishing, possible clearing there of Prince of Wales Island tomorrow afternoon. And then taking a look ahead to, let's see, Tuesday. There we go. Several troughs here. Southwest flow keeps it wet and unsettled here for the southeast coast, but won't be as like anything like the storm coming in tonight. Otherwise, just unsettled here for the Tuesday and maybe in Tuesday night. This band of snow shifts up into the central interior and becomes stationary throughout the day, actually for tomorrow night and Tuesday here with moderate snow. So that's the heavy or the winter storm warning for heavy snow here for the eastern interior. And then the winter weather advisories out all the way up across the Brooks Range and the Arctic coast for light snow, and then the gusty winds reducing visibilities. Narrower band of snow here back across Stebbins, St. Michael, Unalakleet, Cape Romanzoff down to Nunivak Island. Pribilofs look good for a snowy day on Tuesday, and definitely here into the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula with scattered snow showers over Bristol Bay. Out to the west, high pressure, light winds, and not much at all going on. For lows tonight, 5 to 10 here for the Arctic coast, about the same north slope. South of the mountains, though, dramatically warmer. You can see pops up to near 30 there for the upper Yukon, Koyukuk Valley areas. And then lower teens back out here to the west. Tin City this afternoon just sitting at, I think it was 5 degrees above zero. So these temperatures here won't be much lower than what you're currently seeing now. Lower 20s for the Pribilofs and lower 30s for the Aleutians. South Central Alaska, lows lower to mid 30s, and the Panhandle 40s with the storm, with the wind and precipitation. And then highs tomorrow, not much warmer, 40s to lower 50s there, with mid 40s all the way up into the central Tanana Valley, lower 40s to Sitna Valley, but much colder back, especially west of the Alaska Range, into the 20s, all the way back to the southwest coast, teens for the Arctic coast. And then looking at Tuesday morning lows, 30s for the Panhandle, 25 to 30 over the interior, mid 20s south central Alaska, and the highs back into the 40s over southern Alaska, but mid 30s there in the Tanana Valley, and 45 to 50 for the southeast coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for tomorrow. Marginal and IFR conditions here from actually the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, northward and eastward here, Brooks Range to the eastern Arctic coast. Big area of VFR here over the central and eastern interior, a little bit into the Copper River Basin, but mostly north of the Alaska Range. And some IFR, Prince William Sound, and lots of IFR here across all of the southeast coast. Tomorrow afternoon, VFR breaks out across the entire area there, even Elfin Cove, but hanging into the IFR zone, Yakutat, Prince William Sound, on up to the Alaska Range, even the western Alaska Range here, especially in the afternoon with flow becoming westerly here. Looks pretty like a pretty good IFR day in the afternoon, especially here for the western Alaska Range. IFR holding eastern Arctic coast, areas of here over the western interior, marginal, covering all the Bering Sea and Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. And for Tuesday morning, same thing, no change. Marginal VFR, St. Lawrence Island, all the way down to the Aleutians. I call it areas of, there'll probably be some areas of VFR mixed in, but basically expect marginal out there. A band of IFR here through the central interior and improving. VFR, Kodiak Island, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, right up into the Matanuska Valley. Marginal VFR, Copper River Basin. IFR, Central Eastern, Beaufort Sea Coast, and the Panhandle, marginal. For the afternoon Tuesday, VFR breaks out here over the southern southeast coast to about Port Alexander, and then marginal becomes IFR up around Lynn Canal, especially Glacier Bay, to about Yakutat, with VFR westward to Prince William Sound. Now just a narrow band of IFR southern slopes of the eastern and central Alaska Range, and this band of IFR here holds pretty stationary throughout the day Tuesday, with marginal to the north, and here's some more IFR from about the Pribilofs down to the north shore of the Fox Islands and Alaska Peninsula. Anaktuvik, marginal VFR at times, or mostly tomorrow. Same forecast for Adigan, marginal VFR. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR becoming IFR into the afternoon. And that same trend for rainy, marginal to start, becoming IFR for the afternoon. And windy VFR, possible marginal VFR at times here in the southern entrance, otherwise no problems there. And for Isabel, except maybe turbulence, and Isabel, marginal VFR becoming IFR. And Mentasta, starting out VFR early in the morning, then trending toward IFR into the afternoon. Just look for a deterioration in conditions, ceiling visibility is falling the entire day. And for Tanita, looks one of the rare forecasts I ever put IFR the entire day for Tanita, but tomorrow looks like it would be the day. And for Portage, VFR becoming IFR. Chilcoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels, the south and southeast floor here, 4,000 feet by tomorrow morning, pulls right up to the upper Yukon Valley, and then 2,000 to 4,000 feet here across the Panhandle, 6,000 feet barely into Dixon Entrance. And at the surface here, North Gulf Coast, and then plunging southward, south of the Alaska Peninsula, just east of Kodiak, all the way down to just about the Aleutians. And for the icing, maybe some areas of light icing possible there up on the north slope of the Arctic coast. Another zone here of probably mixed icing above about 4,000 feet of the light variety. Same thing for the Alaska Peninsula, but heavier icing likely here with that moisture coming northward off the Pacific. So areas of considerable moderate rime icing shifting north and northeast and throughout the day. And for the jet stream, upper level low coming right up over the south central Alaska area tomorrow. A smaller one out here to the west, kind of tracking south and southeast. And that keeps the jet well to the south, kind of cutting up across the southeast coast a little bit. Stronger though down toward Vancouver Island. And for 9,000 feet, low center tracks up to about this position. The other one lifts northward here into the interior. And that's going to make for kind of a lighter wind pattern over southern Alaska. But out here to the west, northwesterlies 25 to 35, and southwesterlies 35 to as high as 50 knots there across the panhandle. Pretty brisk from the central interior on up to the Brooks Range, as high as 35 knots, and 3,000 feet northwest 25 to 30, more or less here. Well, pretty widespread over the eastern Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula turning westerly Kodiak. Lighter winds due to the dual low pressure centers here over the southern part of the state. North of that, though, 25 to as high as 40 knots there on the western Arctic coast. Lighter winds over the western Aleutians. Good southwest flow over the panhandle. Moderate chop there and here along the Alaska Peninsula and the Brooks Range.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
The Space Weather Prediction Center has had a long-standing relationship with the power industry, so they've been aware that solar storms, the geomagnetic storm piece of that, can affect the operation of their systems and induce extra currents and loads on those systems that can either trip those systems offline or in the worst of cases, cause damage. That relationship goes back for several decades. In fact, a big incident in 1989 where part of Quebec was tripped offline that affected something like 6 million customers for about 9 hours. I think that really raised the awareness in the power industries.
When we get the alert, we watch the grid and start looking for issues. Are we seeing a decline in voltage? Are we seeing equipment failures? And we readjust the system to try to mitigate those problems, try to keep the lights on and keep it from going out.
Averaging about 500, 550 kilometers per second.
If we didn't have this early warning, we wouldn't see it until our sensor saw it. Getting more information quicker and faster before the storm hits, not during the storm, is a big improvement.
In the long term, I think what we need and what we're moving toward, the U.S. as a whole, is better modeling, fully understanding this phenomenon, understanding how it would impact specific systems.
Rather than actually experiencing a storm, we can simulate storms in our software and see what the impact is. We try to get ahead of it. We always plan that if there's an outage, how can we keep the lights on? What's the best process to prevent it?
In the end, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a whole mix of operational procedures driven by what we do on prediction and warning. And then there also will probably be some level of hardware controls to ensure the reliability of the grid.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
There's different types of impacts on communication systems, and the HF we call the high frequency, which is that band of communications 3 to 30 megahertz. But it's a very important band of radio communication because it's used widespread. It's used, for example, by the airlines.
HF radio is most commonly used for position reporting when you're going across the ocean airspace, which is devoid of radar. And ATC can't see you, so it's up to you to report your position and your altitude and your speed.
HF works great most of the time, except during a big flare. And during a big flare, that HF communication capability could be gone within a minute or two. So as soon as we see something happening in there, or we see a flare, it's one of the first things we do is alert the aviation community, hey, big flare, HF's going to be impacted.
Once we know that there's an event going on, then the aviation industry and the airlines can react to that. They can alter their routes over the poles. They can lower the altitudes that they're flying at, or maybe decide not to fly at all in the interest of the passenger safety.
So that's just one example of how HF is used, but the emergency response community will use it a lot too. It's one of their primary backups.
When you've lost connectivity between certain government agencies, it gives you that long-range coverage to talk from out-of-state to federal governments or from the FEMA locations to the state emergency operations centers.
So if you've got a big hurricane impact in the coastline, whatever big city, we've got the cell towers down and whatnot, we've got emergency communication folks in there. Those folks are very familiar with space weather and how it impacts their systems.
Here in recent years, it was used during Katrina when we had a lot of communications outages down there. It was also used during Hurricane Ike. There was an outage of the telephone circuits with the Texas State Emergency Office, so it was used in both of those situations.
So when we talk about backup, especially for the airlines, typically they'll have SATCOM, so that'll be satellite communication.
The satellite technology that emergency responders use could be GPSs, could be satellite phones, satellite data terminals.
Space weather events can impact SATCOMs. The impact can range from a nuisance to loss of a spacecraft. So we will give them the heads up. If we have space weather events, flares, whatnot, they need to know what's impacting their systems. Situational awareness is key. Time is of essence to these folks. Again, it's life and death.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to today's sea ice analysis. Still expanding. In fact, this area here filling in with the heavier ice in the blue shaded zone up farther south than yesterday. And still slow, a little bit more ice here south of St. Lawrence Island, kind of progressing ever so slowly to the southwest, and also even in over Norton Sound. And for tomorrow, storm warnings out. West winds 50, gusts 70 early on here for the north coast. Southeast 50 knots sustained for Lynn Canal and 45 knots for Stevens Passage. Coming down to 40 knots there in the south coast in the afternoon. And Clarence Strait, storm warnings tonight and gales tomorrow. For Tuesday, lighter winds everywhere, down to 20 knots now for Clarence Strait, Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait, south 30 for Lynn Canal, and west-southwest at 20 with seas about 12 feet here, really all along the coast, pretty uniform wind pattern, 20 knots. And west winds at 20 tomorrow for Prince William Sound, and small craft advisories, west 25 for the North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, southwest 25, small craft advisories for Cook Inlet with those seas about 7 to 8 feet. And for Tuesday, lighter winds, Cook Inlet, especially north of the Forelands, down to 10 knots, 15 south of the Forelands to west 15, Kamishak Bay, about 20 knots for the Barrens, southwest here turning south at 15 knots for the North Gulf Coast, and Prince William Sound, light southwest winds with 2-foot seas. And for Kodiak tomorrow, west 30 knots from Shelikof Strait on out into the Pacific, and from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, west 30 knots, Alaska Peninsula northwest 30, seas 9 to 10 feet, and northwest 30 for Bristol Bay. Then for Tuesday, southwest 20 for Bristol Bay, kicking up about 30 knots as you head down toward Cape Sarachef on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Pacific side, gale warnings, west 35 knots, but from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, just 15 knots, and west-southwest 20 across Kodiak Island. Western Aleutians tomorrow, not too bad here west of Adak, west-northwest of 15. And then small craft advisories for the Adak and Atka area, northwest 25, all the way over to Unalaska Island. And for Tuesday, gale warnings here for Unalaska Island especially, and possibly here Unmak Island, but 25 to 30, diminished to 20 knots here for the central Aleutians, and down to 10 knots from the west-northwest for the western Aleutians, from about at least Amchitka on out, with 4-foot seas. And for the southwest coast, pretty windy day tomorrow there with gale force northwesterlies and storm force gusts. Northwest 25, though, for the Pribilofs. Gales for St. Matthew Island. North 35, St. Lawrence Island. Back down to 25 for the Norton Sound Zone. And that'll be even lighted down to 15 on Tuesday there. 25 knot winds, St. Lawrence Island, all the way down to Nunivak Island, then northeast 25 out of Kuskokwim Bay, northwest 30 for the Pribilofs, turning north at the same speed for St. Matthew Island. Eastern Boulevard Sea Coast tomorrow on the extreme east side there, demarcation point or over toward there, east 25 knots. So brisk wind advisories here all along the coast, out of the northeast mostly. And then we've got gale warnings here from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales for 35 knot winds. Then those fall back to brisk wind advisory levels here for Tuesday, north 25 and northeast 30 there for the western Capes, and then the west side 25 knots turn east at 25 for the central coast, and then 25 to 30 knot northeast winds for the eastern coastline. And for tonight, look for some flurries up there, especially over the north slope, but nothing really significant in the way of accumulations. Those winds, especially through the passes of the Brooks Range, getting pretty brisk here, as you can see. A pretty tight gradient there right on out to the northwest coast. That should tend to maybe clear it out a little bit there, especially around the Kivalina area. Otherwise, this low pulling back. Snow with that, especially to the west of the low center. High wind warning out for the Panhandle tonight. Winds 40 gusting above 60 miles an hour south, working northward until 7 a.m. tomorrow. And then that rolls eastward tomorrow. Showers and slowly diminishing winds, especially to the north. Colder air, snowfall levels falling back down to sea level here for the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and snow back out to the west. And then winter storm warnings for heavy snow, maybe 6 to 10 inches here due to this very slow stationary band of moderate snow. It's going to set up over the Tanana Valley up toward the southern Brooks Range. Otherwise, got a series of systems and continued southwest flow. That's going to keep it wet and unsettled across the southeast coast, and scattered snow showers across really all of southern Alaska. Widespread light snow for the Alaska Peninsula, the eastern Aleutians, and actually not too bad up all over the north slope to the northwest coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.